Today, I'm sitting down with Noah Rubin from NBC Sports Edge, having a chat with him about life as a fantasy basketball analyst. The next in our series of one-on-one interviews. Let's go. Balls deep.
I could bet all of the riches that I ever had.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball Podcast. FBIbasketball.com is our website. At Adam King 91 on Twitter is where you will find me. I am Adam King, your host. And as I said, joining me today in the third episode of our analyst series is Noah Rubin. Noah, good afternoon, evening.
Evening. I think it will be evening technically, but it's still good. It's good to be on here. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, no, look, it's been fun so far. We were chatting just before. I've had a couple of NBC guys on so far, so it will be good to hear your perspective on NBC and just on life, doing what we do here with fantasy basketball. So the first question we sort of go into is really, I guess, how you got here, like where you sit now in this space. But firstly, I think the question I like to, well, not get out of the way, but is this for you? Is this a full-time job, or for you is this a hobby turned job that you squeeze in between actually working a real full-time job?
Yeah, it was supposed to, or I guess it was supposed to be still technically as a part-time job. But obviously with only a few of us left, I'm working full-time hours. So there's really not any time to do anything else. So this is my full-time gig.
Cool. Okay. So, and writing, I suppose, is that what you've done? Like, how did you get here? Did you have another job? Because I know speaking with Dan Titus previously, he worked at NASA, I think. Like, so he had this huge other space that he worked in, and he just left it to go to fantasy sports about 4 or 5 years ago. Is that sort of what's happened with you, or has this always been building to something like this?
No, I didn't start at NASA or anywhere close to that. But so I went to school, the University of North Georgia in Dahlonega, for journalism. So I started off taking classes there, covering local high school sports in the North Georgia area. Started doing that. Did that for a couple of years. And while I was in school, started playing pickup basketball with some local guys. And well, before I get into that, let me just say everybody kind of plays fantasy sports, I guess, kind of growing up. I played a little bit of fantasy basketball, didn't play a ton until I got to college, which is when I had friends ask me to join the Dynasty Fantasy Football League. Absolutely fell in love with that and kind of became obsessed. Spent way too much time stressing about drafting and making trades, not ever paying attention in class. But because I was more of a basketball fan, played basketball in high school, I decided to start a Dynasty Basketball League with some of my friends from school. So that was kind of my first real experience with fantasy basketball. So I'm not going to talk about how we did points scoring because I'll lose all credibility for what we tried to do. Nobody will take me serious, but happy to know that league is now 9-cat format. So we're good. We're a normal league, kind of. But while I was in school playing pickup with some local guys, made some friends. One of them said, hey, my friend writes about fantasy basketball for NBC. Like, would that be something you're interested in? Should I get him in contact with you? And I was like, yeah, I would love to do something like that, covering the NBA instead of local high school volleyball. That sounds a lot more fun. And turns out it was Dr. A, Steve Alexander. So got in contact with him and Ryan Knaus and kind of did some practice blurbs, phone interviews and things. Didn't work out the first time, but stayed in contact with them for almost a year. emailing every once in a while saying, hey, just don't forget about me. If anything opens up, let me know because I'd love to do that. Finally, something opened up and I was able to start November of 2021, I believe, which was right before I was about to graduate school. So worked out nicely to be able to start then. And I've just been working with them for almost a year and a half now.
Yeah, cool. And I think, I mean, I'm sure talking to others, this will be a theme as well, but I think a lot of people came in, well, through the fantasy football path, but then also when they got into this space, it was about the blurb writing. Like, I think that's where a lot of us started was writing player blurbs. And I think it's such a great way of anyone that is watching or anyone that's interested in sort of getting into fantasy basketball writing, that is probably where you will start and where you want to start, because I think it gives you such an overview of the whole business. And um, you really have to, like, writing blurbs are hard. They're not like people see them, they pop up on their player notes and player screens and that sort of thing. But every note that you write, you have to research. Like, you have to be aware of stats. You have to have what they've done in the last week, the last month, sort of any themes or anything that's happening. And so it's pretty full on. Okay, so yeah, so obviously, well, you're much younger than me. Obviously, if you've graduated,
Yeah.
whereas I can't even remember graduating. uh, so okay, so fantasy basketball, and look, where you said, I mean, your home league or your league that you initially set up, that dynasty league. I think they're the leagues where you want to be trying things like some wacky
Oh my
scoring
gosh, yeah.
sort of thing. Our league this year, the one that I'm in, sort of got me into fantasy. I'm the commissioner now. I wasn't when we started, but I took over. And this season we actually switched from, we were an 11 category league. So we had double doubles and tech fouls, which I hated. And I pushed and pushed to get rid of it. And they finally agreed. And it's a keeper league. So it's not a dynasty league.
Okay. Gotcha.
We have keeper, then we have 2, then we have 3, then we reset. So we reset this year. So I was allowed to get rid of those categories. And I actually talked them into getting rid of turnovers as well and switching field goal percentage, free throw percentage, and combining them into true shooting percentage. So it's now a 7 category league, which was interesting. It took all of us a little bit of getting used to, with knowing who to target as an efficient sort of scorer. Because even someone like Giannis, who's terrible from the free throw line, is good in that format because his field goal percentage is so high, and he doesn't attempt a lot of threes either. So
yeah, thank goodness.
So no, I think, and it's how, so that league's obviously been going for a while, and it's a dynasty league.
Yeah.
And that's not something I've really got in here as a topic, but dynasty is something that I'm starting to get a little bit more interested in as well. So what are your, like, I guess you'd be in both. You'd be in redraft leagues and dynasty leagues. Do you have a preference?
It's definitely dynasty leagues. I realized pretty quickly playing in some redraft leagues with people in the industry that I'm much better at dynasty. Those tend to go a little bit better. Also, just a little bit off topic, Roto leagues. I joined the FBI one, and I don't think I knew what I was doing for the first 4 or 5 months. So that was a learning experience as well. It didn't go, but definitely dynasty leagues. I'm much better at trading than I am at necessarily drafting for redraft. So I enjoy the aspect of honestly tanking, trading away everybody, getting a bunch of picks in, and then just taking a few year rebuild. I did that in my home league, like 2-year rebuild, and now I have a bunch of young guys. It's a lot more fun that way for me. So
yeah, I think I came in just playing head to head, and similar though, Roto is not like, I know Roto, a lot of positives to Roto formats, and especially the fact that you don't have to worry about this stupid time of year with fantasy playoffs and people resting and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I'm not as good at Roto as I am at head to head, and I think part of that is because I just punt. I punt hard, and I mean, people know that. Like, I'm more than okay to punt 4 categories in a 9 category league and just go 5 cat strong. So that doesn't work in Roto. You can't do that.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, I tend to prefer that as well. But Dynasty's been interesting, obviously with Matt Lawson. I sort of working with him. I read his stuff. I check out his stuff, and it's even just in this year in my first Dynasty league, and I didn't do very well in the Pro 30 league, but actually I enjoyed it and traded Kyrie away for Anthony Simons, which that was offered to me, and I sort of thought, no way, I can't make that trade. But then talking to Matt, he said that's a really good trade. Like he's quite high on Simons, and yeah. So anyway, it's we're not meant to be talking about fantasy really. So outside of fantasy, so when you're not working, what are you like doing? You live by yourself? Do you live with your partner? Do you live at home? What are your hobbies? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we live in South Carolina, moved up here a few months ago for her job. So because I'm entirely working from home, I just kind of follow her wherever. So the schedules are pretty different because right now I'm basically working every single night, doing game recaps. Me and Raphael basically 6 times a week at least are just writing out blurbs, and Zach does it when he can, but I think his schedule is a little bit more limited. But yeah, so our schedules don't exactly line up. She works during the day, I work at night. So we usually only get like a few hours during the day to hang out. So we sit and watch a lot of TV, occasionally go for walks. Recently, she likes more reality shows. So we've been binge watching old seasons of Survivor. We just got on that. We watched The Bachelor and Bachelorette, which I don't know if many people would admit, but I have no problem doing it because I enjoy it. But and then when I'm watching shows, movies, and stuff by myself, I like a lot of Star Wars. Just have no problem flipping a movie like that on in the background while I'm working. If there's no game on, because generally when I'm finishing up writing blurbs, there isn't any game on. It's a couple hours past, but definitely still play a good bit of pickup basketball. Make some friends and community that way, despite being in a new state. But yeah, honestly, when I'm not working, those are the few things I do, and I just kind of stay in my lane.
Yeah, it is hard. I would assume for you guys over there with the if you're doing blurbs, you can't do them during the day. They have to be done after the games. Whereas for us over here, if I'm writing things post game, it's sort of 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon. So it can line up with a normal work day, I suppose, what you would consider regular hours. So it still gives me the nights to hang out with my kids and go and play basketball or go to the movies or whatever we want to do. So that is one thing that I think is a benefit of being here and not over there in terms of the timing. In saying that, I'd love to just sit down at night and watch basketball because if I'm working at my day job and I'm running a workshop or I'm running a seminar or something, I can't have the basketball going while I'm doing that. So I do miss chunks. So Star Wars, Star Wars I think is a pretty common interest across probably a lot of people of your age and my age. So you're obviously you're a lot younger. You would have been born after the original Star Wars were made.
Yeah. So my wife finds it interesting because I tell her that I was like 4 or 5 years old when I started watching, because I remember vividly, but before Revenge of the Sith came out, so the first 5 movies had come out, my dad would bring the projector home from work. We'd set it up in the basement and we'd watch the first 5 movies. And then we went and watched Revenge of the Sith in theaters. So started watching that when I was pretty young. Liked it a lot. But honestly, like probably about a year ago, I was like, I'm just going to rewatch everything. And instead of just rewatching all the movies, I rewatched all the shows as well. And now I've started reading all the books. Like I'm a Star Wars nerd at this point.
Yeah, and there's a lot to watch.
So many.
With all the shows now as well. I sort of got my son's 12, and I made him sit and watch all the Star Wars movies, and he liked them. I wouldn't say he's a Star Wars nerd or a nut or anything like that. So he did enjoy them, but he's very into Dungeons and Dragons at the moment.
Gotcha.
That's his thing. So yeah, that's where most of his time goes at the moment, is playing Dungeons and Dragons, and which is fine. I don't know anything about it, but I'm happy to support him through it.
Yeah.
So from a non-fantasy perspective, but just basketball itself, have you got a favorite team, a favorite player, sort of team you grew up watching or supporting?
Yeah, I'm a Hawks fan. Grew up in Georgia, so lived in Georgia from about 5 weeks old until 5 months ago. So spent my entire life there, going to a bunch of Hawks games, usually a couple a year. I don't really have a favorite player at this point. Honestly, I don't dislike any. I don't want to say any. Most players. Sorry, like I said, I don't dislike any players, and Dylan Brooks' face just popped in my head.
Yeah, that's who popped into
Not
my head too.
right. Not that I don't know. It's just not what I would do. Not my cup of tea, some of the things
Yeah.
he says. But pretty much like everybody watching every team, it's just, I don't know, I'm a basketball fan. I'm not a homer the way I am with other sports. Like with football, I'm a Jets fan. I pretty much only watch Jets games, don't miss a game. With basketball, it's like anything's on, I'm going to watch it. It's NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you have to be to some degree when you are writing, because you do need to be fairly neutral, and it's not always the case if you're doing a player blurb for like Dylan Brooks, for instance, and he shoots 3 of 15 from the field and gets
everybody will know.
Then you might throw a little snide comment into the blurb.
With Grayson Allen, it's the same way. I think I've tried my best to absolutely just avoid blurbing Grayson Allen. I think there was like one time he had like 8 threes, and I was like, or maybe it wasn't 8, it was like 6 or more or something. And I was trying to justify, do I really have to write this about him? But it's kind of hard to not when he hits that many. But
yeah, it is. Yeah, sometimes you just have to, and you just have to sort of bite the bullet and write it. And try to be as friendly as you can. I'm a little bit the same, I think. Like growing up, I liked the Bulls. I mean, NBA was limited here in Australia, so we got, I think I said this to Dan, our exposure was one game a week, and it was normally a replay at midnight on a Friday or something. So we didn't see much live basketball. It was all about the Come Fly With Me and Michael Jordan's Playground. So the videos and the watching NBA action on the weekends, basketball cards. So obviously everyone was into Jordan. He was the guy. But for me, it was the Pacers. They were the team that I liked, with Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, those guys. Unfortunately, Reggie Miller hasn't turned into one of my favorite callers. So I try to remember the good times when he's commentating. But yeah, look, not all players turn into good commentators. I think we can. There's quite a few that don't fit that mold. So that sort of covers most of what I had. I guess actually, Dan had some interesting answers to this in terms of holidaying, vacationing. Have you got any? Have you been on any big trips? Any favorite sort of destinations that you've been to?
Yeah. So basically, growing up, once a year, my family would go to Hilton Head, which is in South Carolina. Was a little bit further from where we were living at the time. It's a lot closer to us now, but yeah, I mean, we my wife and I honeymooned in Hawaii last year, so that was incredible to be able to go there. And then, honestly, we get a mini kind of sort of vacation once a month because her job, she works mostly in Columbia, but she also has to cover Charleston area as well. So we drive 2 hours over there right by the beach as well once a month. So it's like a nice little mini vacation for me because I just do a little bit of work from the hotel, but it's a vacation other than that. So
yeah, it's good being able to do that, take your work with you a little bit, because you can still sort of take those holidays, but not really be on holiday. And Australia, is that somewhere that you'd ever, like, is it on a list of places to visit, or it's too far?
My list of places is pretty small that I would want to visit. I think, trying to remember, I think some sort of Bahamas, Caribbean island thing is on my list.
Yeah.
And then maybe somewhere in Spain, but I don't have a massive list of places I want to travel. I think it would be cool, but I don't think it's something that's on my list of places to go.
Yeah.
Apologies, I don't mean any offense.
No. Look, well, it is a long way. It's like it's not a 3-hour flight. It's a full day sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, like I love going over to the States, and I'm heading back again in a few months. But that's because I like NBA basketball. So if you're coming here, I think you sort of need to have a reason, I guess, to come here, because it is quite a big country. And so before we leave this question, you knew this one was coming. Next season in drafts, at currently where we sit now, if you were in a redraft league drafting, say, next week, where do you think Wembanyama will go? So what do you think his sort of ADP will be? And B, where would you be comfortable taking him at the moment?
So I'll start with where I'm comfortable taking him. I don't think I'd take him before the 4th round, and that might be more conservative than just about everybody else you ask.
So you won't get him?
Never. I don't plan to get him in a single redraft, but that's why I play Dynasty. Because I could either trade for a pick, or if you lose, it's not actually a bad thing, because then you get Wembanyama this year. But I don't plan on having him in any redraft leagues, because I wouldn't take him maybe at the 4th, because I guess we'll see based on his situation. But I just think it's hard to imagine him playing 60 games in his rookie year. I've read a lot of good things about who he's working with to protect his body, but as a 7'4" guy going to a tanking team, I just don't foresee him playing enough games. There will be adjustments. It doesn't matter how good he is, how talented he is. I think he may not get off to the best start, just because not many rookies are able to, or they're not able to keep it up for a full season. It's somewhere where I'd rather have somebody who's already an all-star or an all-NBA player in the first 2 rounds than this rookie who's such a wild card that could pan out. Fair. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't plan on having him in any redraft leagues until year 2.
Yeah. No, look, I think Dan was similar. Maybe he was a little more aggressive. I think he said he'd sort of go round 3. But just from questions I get and what you read and the hype, I suppose, I think he'll go in the first round in some leagues. Like, I think if you're picking at pick 12, so if you're right on the turn and you can pair him with someone like a Damian Lillard or someone who's a bit more of a sure thing, I'm almost certain there'll be people in leagues that will risk it and take him in the first round. So for that reason, I don't think I will get him either, because I don't really want to go that high. I probably will, just in one league, to get him, just because I think it'll be interesting. It'll be a bit of a ride. We both sort of, Dan and I sort of came up with, we were trying to think of a comparison. So if you had to look at his season or his potential season, who could you compare him to from sort of the last 10, 15 years? And I think both of us, without meaning to, we both thought about Karl Anthony Towns and his rookie season. And I've got his numbers. So in his rookie season, 15-16, 18.3 points, 10.4 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.7 blocks, which is the best season he's had in blocks, was his rookie season. 37% from 3. 34% from 3. Didn't really hit a lot of threes in his rookie season. Was under 1 per game. But in his rookie season, he was in 8-cat. He was the 8th ranked player per game.
Wow.
The 18th ranked, not 8th.
Okay.
So 2nd round player with those numbers. I don't know. I guess I could see Wembanyama. I'm not sure he'll be a big rebounder. I think he'll be a little bit like a Jaren Jackson or a Brook Lopez. Like, I think he might only be about 8 rebounds per game. Because as you said, he's going to be on a tanking team probably.
Right.
And just with his build, and he's still growing into his body, I think teams will try to keep him out of the paint as much as possible. So, I don't see him just sort of grabbing 15 rebounds a game or anything like that.
No, I think if I'm just throwing out numbers, I could see like 22 points, 8 rebounds, handful of assists, over 2 blocks, very realistic. I think, along with how many games is he going to play, it's also how many minutes is he going to play. A team just got arguably the greatest or most talented prospect ever. The general manager is going to say, you better not run his knees into the ground. Now, if he goes to Toronto, I don't think Nick Nurse is going to care. He's going to play him 40 minutes a game. But I think it's a very realistic chance that a coach knows that their team isn't going to be very good, depending on where he goes, wants to get him acclimated to the NBA, playing alongside these guys, playing within their system, that he might play 26 to 28 minutes a game. I think, but like a number of factors. If he goes to, say, it's Houston, how does that work alongside Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. and Jabari Smith? Or Charlotte, where a guy like LaMelo Ball is probably going to have the ball in his hands a lot. I think it's a lot of different factors. I don't know if there's a perfect situation, maybe San Antonio, where he just steps in and can get the ball whenever he wants.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of factors that it's hard to say right now, but I don't plan on having him.
No. Yeah, I think where he lands is a big factor in what his production is like, and I think from a production standpoint or a minutes played, that sort of thing, I'd love to see him go to Houston or Detroit, but I have no faith in their coaching staff that they will actually utilise him correctly. I mean, look at Şengün last season; he barely played.
This season,
this season he hasn't played enough. Like if they had a better coach, then maybe. But I think purely from a development standpoint, I think the Spurs would know how to develop him because they've done it before. We've seen it. So from a fantasy perspective, I'm not sure that would be like. I think they would really be careful with him. Whereas a dumb team might play him 20 minutes or play him 35 minutes. Like you don't know what they're going to do. So we'll see.
Detroit might go with Bagley instead of Wembanyama.
And Wiseman.
Have Bagley and Wiseman start throwing Wembanyama off the bench. Why not?
Yeah, why not? All right. So look, that's almost bang on 30 minutes, which is what I'm finding with these shows. So before I let you go, talk a little bit about, I mean, there's obviously content is starting to wrap up a little bit now with all the redraft leagues coming to an end, but tell us a little bit about what you've got going on at NBC.
Yeah, at NBC, it's a lot of blurbs right now. We'll have our draft guide this summer, but I'm planning on doing my own thing, kind of like doing like a Substack podcast, just trying to get some Dynasty content out this summer. I don't know exactly when this will air, but it'll probably be around the same time that I start doing that stuff. So going to do Dynasty rankings, recaps, podcasts where I get a bunch of fantasy analysts, Dynasty analysts to come on and just recap the season as we get into draft. I'm hoping to get them back on, talk about players before the draft, after the draft, probably try and also get like some just regular draft analysts that don't have much of a fantasy background to come on and also talk about prospects. Just a lot of unique things that I'm planning. Hopefully it'll all work out and be able to get some fun people on. But yeah, a lot of Dynasty content coming this summer.
Yeah, look, I think that's almost the way of the future. Like I think the content basically stopped, or sort of this time of year it stops, and then we don't hear much for 3-4 months. But I think there's enough people out there now that are wanting content 365 days a year. So they are the diehards, but there's more and more of them, I think, coming out of the woodwork. So we're much the same at FBI. Like Matt's obviously the Dynasty guy, so he's got a lot going on at the moment, and even I think for him, he's even sort of verbalized to me that this is actually his busiest time of year now, getting ready for Dynasty and the NBA draft and that sort of thing. So which makes sense, and for a lot of us, it's the quietest time of year, but. Well, that's good. So, look, thanks for jumping on. That will do it for today's show. Remember, you can check out all of our content at fbibasketball.com. That is where Matt will have all of his Dynasty stuff. You can follow the podcast on Spotify and Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. love it if you could give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our following is building slowly, and until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.